It's the greatest German legend, the saga of the Nibelungs. Heroes, dragons, and a lot of gold.
I think the treasure is still there.
Researchers and adventurers search for the legendary treasure.
The Nibelung treasure can definitely exist.
A huge amount of gold and silver. You couldn't even fathom it in your wildest dreams.
How much truth to the myth is there? What is with Siegfried's wonder sword?
You can see where it got hit.
Scientists are unearthing the origins of the saga. The traces lead them to Scandinavia.
Sigurd's horse Grani, with a legendary cursed treasure on its back.
The search for the Nibelung treasure. The great myths of mankind. Mysteries passed on over thousands of years. Inexplicable events, places shrouded in legend, and superhuman heroes. Even scientists are fascinated. Is there any truth to these ancient legends? Researchers across the globe are working hard to solve the greatest mysteries of our time. The Rhine, stream of sagas and myths, and center stage for the tale of the Nibelungs. Allegedly, their legendary treasure was sunk near the German city of Worms. Could it still be there today? Hans-Jörg Jacobi is a Nibelung hobbyist. A former city architect, he has been looking for the Rhine gold since childhood.
You have got to believe that it's true, that what's written in the Nibelungenlied might actually be correct.
He believes in the Nibelungenlied, the song of the Nibelungs. He used to scour the Rhine with his dad. Today, he's following a lead.
We asked ourselves, how would we pull it off? And surprisingly, there's one approach that seems pretty logical. In my opinion, the treasure is still there.
The legend says the shores of the Rhine were once home to the mysterious Burgundian kingdom. One day, an unknown warrior arrives at the royal court of Worms. It is Siegfried of Xanten, a legendary warrior. He is said to have seized the treasure of King Nibelung in the high north. 40 cartloads of gold and silver, and a cloak of invisibility to top it off. Siegfried kills a dragon with his wonder sword. He bathes in the dragon's blood and becomes invulnerable. But a fallen leaf from a lime tree leaves an unprotected spot between his shoulders. The victorious hero pledges allegiance to King Gunther. As a reward, he can marry Gunther's sister, Kriemhild. They are the protagonists in this epic poem of love, betrayal, and murder. Siegfried and his wife Kriemhild, her brother King Gunther, and Hagen von Tronje, the king's advisor. He sees Siegfried as a threat and puts King Gunther at odds with the hero. In the name of the king, he sets a trap for Siegfried and kills him by thrusting a spear into the only unprotected part of his skin. Hagen gets hold of the treasure and throws it into the Rhine to hide the gold from Kriemhild. The river has kept the secret ever since. The Nibelung treasure has become part of the many tales of the Rhine shrouded in legend. The Hagen monument in Worms is a reminder of the Nibelungs. But if the treasure didn't exist and there was no hope to find it, this tale would have likely been forgotten long ago.
Humans are fascinated by treasures partly because of the monetary value, obviously, but the treasures that we see in myth tend to be more than that. They have a magical value to them. They have a personality of themselves. They're a character in the story. So, for example, if we think in the Nibelung of Siegfried's invisibility cloak, and I think we like the idea of there being something in the world that connects us to a realm beyond our own. So it's a magical power.
The forests along the Rhine are enchanted by the Nibelungs' magic to this day. Benjamin Czerny is a passionate treasure hunter. Using a metal detector, he searches for the riches of the past.
I think there are still tons of precious metals buried in the ground all over Germany, just waiting to be found.
It is illegal to unearth treasures in Germany without a permit. As soon as he finds something of value, Benjamin Czerny needs to report it to the local authorities. But that doesn't stop him.
This feeling takes you back to your childhood. You never know what you will find. You could dig up something special on any given day.
Benjamin Czerny has made a great find once before, but he dreams even bigger.
Of course, the treasure of the Nibelungs is one of the biggest myths a treasure hunter can discover. An enormous amount of gold and silver, cartloads. You couldn't even fathom that in your wildest dreams.
He too thinks the treasure lies near the Rhine. There once were early settlers along its shores, and they left behind their goods and chattels.
This is the old Rhine running through the cities of Speyer and Römerberg down to Germersheim and Neupotz. And this forest area over here is quite interesting. There's a creek running through it. I think we might be able to find a few things there.
But without a specific lead, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. St. Gall, Switzerland. There's an important clue here. The Benedictine monastery is home to one of the oldest manuscripts of the Nibelungenlied. It dates back to the second half of the 13th century. Medievalist Joachim Heinzler knows the Nibelung saga better than most. He believes the text is based on true events that took place many centuries before the manuscript was written.
Generally speaking, heroic legends were considered historical, a form of passing on history.
To preserve the ancient knowledge, the Nibelungenlied was recited in rhymes. In Germany, its first lines are legendary. Uns ist in alten Meeren Wunders viel geseit, von Helden, Lorbeeren, von großer Arbeit.
Narrating has an essential function for humans. It is a social act that demonstrates our shared identity. We tell each other stories not only for entertainment, but also to share our values and our history, creating a cultural memory in doing so.
There's truth to heroic legends. Heinrich Schliemann, a 19th century archaeologist, is also convinced. He analyzes locations provided by Greek poet Homer and looks for the ancient city of Troy. Following the leads, he actually manages to find the city ruins, the discovery of a century. Does the Nibelungenlied also contain tangible clues leading to the treasure of the Nibelungs? After Siegfried's death, his widow Kriemhild seeks revenge. She turns away from the Burgundians and marries Etzel, king of the Huns. Kriemhild moves to Etzel's empire by the Danube, where she plans her vendetta against Siegfried's murderers. Upon her invitation, Burgundian King Gunther and his entire entourage traveled to the court of the Hun king. They all die in an unparalleled bloodbath. The Burgundians have been eradicated. Pure legend or historically accurate? Truth is, in the Middle Ages, the Nibelungenlied was also popular beyond the German borders. In Scandinavia, where Siegfried allegedly obtained the Nibelung treasure, the saga of the dragon slayer has also lived on. Sigmund Earl pores over the story of the Nibelungs on the Swedish island of Gotland. The archaeologist knows details from the Swedish sources like the back of his hand. And it turns out there are astonishing parallels between the Norse tradition and the Nibelungenlied.
The main characters in Scandinavian tradition are the same as in the Nibelungenlied. The German name Siegfried is Sigurd in the north. We also have King Gunther, whose name in Old Norse tradition is Gunnar, and Hagen von Tronje, who appears as Högni.
An 11th century depiction portrays the details of the Norse saga of Sigurd.
This is clearly Sigurd the Dragon Slayer. Old Icelandic sources claim he did not fight against the dragon, but dug a pit and waited inside until the worm heaved its body across it. And that's when he jerked up his sword and stabbed the dragon.
11th century. Is this the earliest record of the myth? There are even older traces in Visby on the island of Gotland. During the Viking years, Gotland was a hub for trading goods, news, and legends. At the Museum Fornsalen, Sigmund Earl studies ancient sources. The famous picture stones of Gotland, some of them dating back more than 1,500 years. They tell of Viking gods and heroes. Could they also hold clues to the Nibelungs? Using photo technology, Sigmund Earl examines a stone dating back to the 5th or 6th century.
Here we can actually see a depiction of a worm-like, a dragon-like monster, and a human figure in front of it.
Is it Sigurd, the dragon slayer? The experts create a detailed computer model of the stone, bringing invisible parts to light. The artist may very well have depicted a dragon slayer 1,500 years ago. But he carries an axe.
This doesn't match the legend of Sigurd. In the Old Norse literary tradition, Sigurd does not fight the dragon with a hammer or an axe, but stabs it from below.
It turns out the old stone does not show Sigurd or Siegfried. The search continues in Bunga, Gotland, where other picture stones from the 9th century are kept, some of them in good condition. And the researcher actually finds what he's been looking for, a picture that could tie into the saga of Sigurd.
Sigurd's horse Grani, with the legendary cursed treasure on its back. This is the image that became a metaphor in the language of the Vikings. They called gold Grani's burden, and this is exactly what we see here.
And another detail fits the Norse legend. Sigurd's death, indicated by the figure underneath the horse, a crucial sign for Sigmund Earl.
If this was really the depiction of the fallen hero Sigurd, it would mean that we had the earliest record of the Sigurd and Nibelung saga right here, on the Baltic island of Gotland.
The oldest likely source of the Nibelung saga roughly dates back to the year 800, 400 years before the story was written in Germany. A valuable clue in the search for the true story. It is during this era that the serious repercussions of the migration period are seen. With the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century, the continent is shaped for generations by the migration of entire tribes. During this period of transition, it is also the golden age for the historical inspiration for the Nibelung saga, the Burgundian Empire on the Rhine. The first records of the Germanic Burgundians date back to the 1st century, when they were settling in a region now belonging to Poland. The Burgundians established themselves on the Rhine at the start of the migration. And the heart of their empire is exactly where the Nibelungen saga is set, Worms. And just as in the saga, the real Burgundians are doomed. In around 435, they are defeated by Roman troops. They were forced to flee and resettle. The name Burgundy now lives on in France. King Gunther's character is based on an historical figure, the real Burgundian king Gundahar. But there are more parallels between reality and legend. According to Roman sources, the empire got military support from the Huns. And Etzel has a real counterpart too, Attila, legendary leader of the Huns. Like Etzel, Attila is said to have been married to a Germanic woman. She could be the historical inspiration for Kriemhild. Her name, Ildiko, would be Hildchen, Little Hild in German.
The Nibelungenlied mixes reality with fiction. There were real groups of people called the Burgundians, and this is a story about the fall of those great groups of people. We also have the Hun, who are mythologized as being incredibly scary. So the fact that it has this central core of reality means that we can actually believe all aspects of the myth, which makes them more powerful.
With so many characters having traceable roots, it makes it even easier to conclude that the legendary treasure must truly exist.
The Nibelung treasure can definitely exist. Between the 3rd and the 6th centuries, people buried things constantly, particularly precious metals, gold, silver, jewelry, dishes, weapons. They've been found repeatedly over the years, hoards of the most majestic treasure. So the idea that the Nibelung treasure is still out there somewhere is very real.
For treasure hunter Hans-Jörg Jacobi, the traceable roots serve as confirmation.
During the migration period, it was common for every group to carry a treasure. They had to pay their people somehow. That's why every tribe had a treasure.
In the Rhine, countless divers have searched for the treasure, to no avail. Hans-Jörg Jacobi is convinced of one thing: they were looking in the wrong place.
The Nibelungenlied actually gives the exact location of the sunken treasure.
One line in the Nibelungenlied has caught his attention.
Hagen sank the treasure near Loche.
Is this the location of the treasure? Jacobi studies old maps of the region and comes across a place that has long since disappeared.
Lochheim, Loche.
Not only the name stands up, the location seems perfect too.
A bit further down the Rhine, there's a corner. A large bend in the river, where the water's very deep. Down about 16 or 18 meters at average water level. Today it is called the Dark Place.
The bend is still obvious to this day, but Jacobi has a theory as to why divers couldn't find anything. The course of the river has changed over the centuries. Bends have been straightened, tributaries have dried up. The riverbed has moved many times. What used to be the bottom of the Rhine is dry land today. Might this also affect the spot that Hagen once chose? Benjamin Czerny also searches on land. The forest he's scouring lies right next to a small tributary of the Rhine. Unlike in fields and populated areas, many things remain buried in the ground, untouched.
I'm getting a good signal here. I'm definitely going to dig here. Oh, I've already found something. There it is. There. Look. Man, that's crazy. Look. That's incredible. An old brooch made of silver. That's really cool. It's definitely an Art Nouveau brooch dating back to around 1910. They used to make a lot of things with these flowers back then. That's beautiful. A great find, for sure.
Not from the time of the Nibelungs, but the first sign he's on the right track.
The ground is a bit deeper here, and this deepening stretches out along this line from here to there. I suppose this used to be a path a long time ago. There could be more. Let's continue looking over there.
He follows the former road attentively, and it's not long before he gets the next signal.
Wow. I think that's a coin. It's tarnished and green, but you can see a bit of red along the edges. So it's probably copper. It seems pretty old too. They had copper coins 2,000 years ago. Copper, bronze, and so on. They had that very early on.
Czerny can only determine the exact age of the coin and whether it will lead him to the Nibelung treasure once he's home. While Hans-Jörg Jacobi believes he has already found the right place.
We suppose the Rhine used to run closer to here and moved slowly over time, maybe even by as much as its own width. And that's when we said, we actually have to go down there and see what we find.
Jacobi followed his hunch. In the 1970s, with some heavy machinery, he drills a shaft. But the treasure hunt proves complicated. At 10 meters down, the drill hits hard rock. Jacobi orders to stabilize the shaft with pipes. But the structure isn't safe.
We sent a diver in, who immediately started knocking against the wall. And then we pulled him up again with great effort.
The endeavor is too dangerous, and Jacobi aborts the mission. But the failure still boosts his hopes. He believes the impermeable layer of rock could be a cover Hagen placed over the treasure. He suspects there is a cavity beneath it, filled with the gold of the Nibelungs.
It's possible that there are amphoras standing side by side, and maybe there's some sort of stone cover on top of them.
Jacobi can't secure any funding for other excavations. To this day, he hasn't been able to prove his theory.
I think one day it will be found, but it won't be so easy.
Or was the gold of the Nibelungs already found long ago? One of the most precious finds from the Rhine lies here today on Museum Island in Berlin. The museum is filled with showpieces of centuries past, and Heino Neumeier, museum curator, has a real sensation in store: the Hoard of Neupots. In 1967, the first of these pieces appear in a gravel pit in the Rhine. A dredger brings them up. Historians feel incredibly lucky. Because they were encased in the sand of the riverbed, large parts have been well preserved over the centuries.
It was a coincidence and luck that the workers paid attention in that moment and realized the importance of their find right away.
Divers closely examine the ground of the gravel quarry. They want to make sure they don't miss a single piece. The treasures unearthed by the dredgers exceed all expectations. Mirrors, weapons, and vessels brimming with ornaments. Silver, bronze, copper, iron. The value of the raw materials alone is quite impressive.
What we have here is really extraordinary, really unique. It's the biggest hoard from Roman times that was ever found north of the Alps.
Together, the objects weigh over 1,500 pounds, a real treasure, just like in the Nibelungenlied. The divers also retrieve military equipment and tools, and the hinges of rotting cartwheels. Another consistency, because the treasure of the Nibelungs is loaded on carts too.
The Nibelungenlied also states that heavy bullock carts moved this treasure out of the city of Worms, so there are a few things that add up.
Many details seem fitting, but there are also some confusing discoveries.
We also discovered skulls, skeleton parts in the Rhine. Although we can never determine for sure whether they belong to the treasure, they could point to a battle.
In Roman times, the Rhine was a demarcation line subject to fierce fighting. The Romans used battleships in an attempt to protect their empire against Germanic attacks. With limited success, Germanic pillagers incessantly attack wealthy Roman settlements and return east with lots of loot.
It's possible the Roman fleet intercepted the Teutons on their way back. We know that the Romans trapped returning Teutons in the province of Rhaetia, but also in Colonia, and defeated them.
But the Teutons can't outrun the fast boats of the Romans. The treasure of Neupots might have sunk in the Rhine during one of their battles. The Roman coins that were found along with the treasure seem to confirm this.
It is striking that there are no coins minted after 260 CE. We therefore have to assume they all went into the Rhine before or around the year 260.
This is exactly when the Teutons launched what was then their most major attack. Around the year 259, they crossed large parts of the Limes and advanced deeply into Roman territory.
There are sources that document these pillages. In combination with the series of coins, this leads us to a very concrete event in 259-260.
It is clear, the hoard of Neupots can't be the treasure of the Nibelungs.
The Nibelungenlied is set around the year 500, while this event took place 250 years earlier.
Is the Nibelung treasure still waiting to be found? Or is it merely a myth? The treasure hunt begins when old manuscripts were rediscovered. The Nibelungenlied got hardly any attention for centuries, but was found again at just the right moment.
The Nibelungenlied had basically fallen into oblivion until 1755. That's when it was rediscovered. That's when the modern history of the Nibelungenlied begins.
Late in the 18th century, medieval legends suddenly become hugely popular. In the same period, Germany is nothing more than a patchwork of kingdoms and principalities. The feeling of a national identity or a common culture is still weak and is shaken by an invasion. Napoleon successfully wages war against Germany's monarchs. In 1806, he invades Berlin. Many German cities fall under French military rule.
The Nibelung saga became very important in the 1800s because Napoleon was rampaging through Europe. He was conquering everywhere he went. And when you have conquerors doing that, what happens is there's a real desire and drive for people to find their own national identity, especially stories which are all about honor, all about strength, and all about resistance. And that's exactly why the Nibelung was so important. In fact, copies of it were given to troops on the battlefront to inspire them against their new foe.
Composer Richard Wagner takes up the story. The opera cycle, Der Ring des Nibelungen, becomes a worldwide success. In 1924, cinema legend Fritz Lang creates the first motion picture of the legendary characters. In his 5-hour-long silent film, he writes cinematographic history, with the Nibelungs rising to the status of national heroes. The Nazis use the tale for their own purposes. It doesn't matter to them that the story actually depicts the downfall of a tribe. Siegfried's valor and the Burgundian loyalty until death are idolized. Nazi propaganda is home to anything that can be presented as typically German.
For the Nazis, the Nibelungenlied represented a real treasure in terms of something they could exploit for their own propaganda. It features concepts like honor, vengeance, battles, blind loyalty. These are themes the Nazis often used for their own purposes and their warmongering.
Siegfried becomes the quintessential German hero. His victory over the dragon fans the flames of the fantasy. A mysterious sword is said to have led him to triumph. But is there truth to this part of the Nibelungenlied? Bladesmith Stefan Roth wants to get to the bottom of this myth. He has mastered the forging technology that was used more than 1,000 years ago.
In the early Middle Ages, bladesmiths were highly specialized workers who basically manufactured every high-tech product of their time, equal to the weapons that are perhaps manufactured in hidden laboratories or at Area 51 today. Back in the early Middle Ages, these smiths did this work.
Back in the 5th century, swords were high-tech weapons, luxury goods and status symbols alike. They are featured in countless legends. Like in the Norse Didrik saga, which has striking parallels to the Nibelungenlied. Wieland forges a powerful sword by rasping an old sword to powder, which he mixes with the feed for his geese. The blacksmith then takes the digested steel. Using his hammer and an anvil, he creates a wonder sword. Does the legend contain a secret medieval formula?
The transmutation of metallurgical recipes into mythic stories was common practice for alchemists of the time. You might have even seen this as more normal than the writing down of a simple recipe.
Stefan Roth wants to fact-check this. He and his son Darius make a sword following the ancient instructions as closely as possible.
We simply mixed the iron ore with dried bird feces.
Bird feces contain a lot of nitrogen, which could make the steel harder. Does this technique really work? Using a special bloomery, the men set out to manufacture the medieval wonder steel so they can get started with the actual forging process. They start by tackling the ball of steel with nothing but a hammer.
We don't just forge the steel to shape it, it's also a purification process. We obviously want to get rid of the slag the charcoal rests and of course the ashes.
After many hours of work, they end up with a rectangular block. They go on and fold this basic shape several times, working it again and again with a hammer until they create a long blade. Stefan Roth forges a second sword to compare with the Wieland sword. This weapon does not contain bird feces. Which sword will be better? They will test both blades in an old factory building.
Hi, Stefan. Hi, Stefan.
Hi. Yes, here they are, our beautiful swords.
Sixt Wetzler from the German Blade Museum wants to put the Wieland to the test.
It's a fascinating experiment to try and find out whether mixing bird feces into the steel really changes its properties. I'm really excited to see what we'll find.
Sixt Wetzler is not only an archaeologist and expert for ancient blade weapons, he is also an excellent swordsman. In our experiment, he will wield the conventional sword, the blade without any bird feces. Stefan Roth brandishes the sword he forged according to Wieland's technique. He too is an experienced swordsman. What's behind the legend of the wonder weapon? The two experts put the swords to the test. Challenge number 1. Sever a rope with a 2-inch diameter. A test that only a particularly sharp blade can withstand.
The sword has to really rip into the hanging rope, making a clean cut. If it is too blunt, it will merely displace the rope.
Sixt goes first with the conventional sword. The test goes off without a hitch. Next up, the legendary sword. The rope stands no chance against Stefan Roth. Interim conclusion after the first round.
I'd say it's a tie.
It's time to up the game. Sixt will now have to cut through a steel pipe. The medieval blade only makes a dent in the modern steel. Will the alleged wonder sword be more powerful? Not at first glance, but the blacksmith detects a visible cut.
The Wieland sword performed better, literally a clear-cut case.
The final hurdle is a real stress test. 175 pounds of massive ice.
I'm really excited now. I don't know what's going to happen with this material, how the ice will react, so yeah, we'll see.
Not only is ice extremely hard, it also poses a risk to the blade, which can become brittle and break due to the cold. The regular sword withstands the test, but not unscathed.
You can see where it got hit. It's pretty bent right there.
The ice block shows that a sword doesn't just have to be sharp, but stable as well. Will the nitrogen from the bird feces prove effective once again? Stefan Roth shows no mercy on the ice. It takes fewer blows to destroy it. The crucial question is, how did his sword withstand exposure to the cold?
The edges are perfectly fine. I'm actually surprised myself how much such a sword can withstand. I mean, it's a really brutal test.
And the winner is...
Congratulations. Stefan won 2 rounds.
The Wieland sword scored slightly better. As wondrous as the mythical formula may sound, it seems to have been based on actual knowledge.
Maybe people found out by accident, and maybe the stories lived on in the legend.
Our test has shown legendary swords are more than just a fantasy.
Swords are really powerful in myth because they tend to be associated with power, and they tend to be associated with a particular hero. So, for example, if we think of Excalibur and King Arthur. Also, these swords were often highly decorated, and people wouldn't have seen anything like this, so it made them feel like this was an important and magical symbol.
Siegfried achieves his greatest feat with a sword. He defeats the dragon, an opponent far superior. In the Middle Ages, dragons are more than just mythical creatures. People actually believe that they exist. They represent the ultimate evil. Churchgoers believe they have been sent by the devil. Stories of dragon slayers like St. George depict the victory of good over evil. The myth is fueled by bones that are inexplicable to our ancestors. It is not until the modern period that researchers start to investigate these bones. At first, they believe they are dealing with elephant femurs or the teeth of prehistoric giants. In 1824, British geologist William Buckland is the first to attribute a jawbone to an entirely new species of animal. He says his find is part of a gigantic reptile that he calls Megalosaurus. Dinosaur research is born.
Can you imagine finding dinosaur bones? This happened all over the world in ancient times, and they didn't know about dinosaurs or evolution. So it was easy for them to project the dragons on those, which they did.
The dragon, the sword, Siegfried's feat. If we can find explanations for some of the most fantastic details of the myth, the gold has to exist for certain. He also firmly believes the Nibelung treasure is somewhere out there. Helmut Siegert from Heidelberg. The former engineer is a real expert when it comes to finding treasures.
I've known of the Nibelung saga since I was a child. I still have the book here. It has always fascinated me.
Siegert has developed his own method to hunt for treasures. He has detected hundreds of water sources with a dowsing rod he has built himself. Now he believes to have located the Nibelung treasure too. He is using a thin wire rod meant to pick up electromagnetic vibrations.
I sat down and said, okay, worms. Where can I find anything? And the rod was here, and nothing happened. That's when I said, okay, taking the adjacent map, And you can already see what is happening. The rod is moving to the left. So I drew this line here and turned the map. And then the rod slowly moves further over here.
There really is even a sign on the map marking a location, very close to the Rhine. Will it lead Siegfried to the treasure of the Nibelungs? His discovery exceeds all of his hopes.
I'm standing in front of ruins of an old fortress. This used to be a Roman burgus with a harbor where they loaded stones from the Odenwald mountain range onto ships.
An ideal hiding spot for the Nibelung treasure. Taking a small tributary, a ship can quickly cover the distance between the Rhine and the castle, even if it's heavily loaded. The fortress lies protected deep in the woods. According to Siegfried's theory, Hagen loaded the treasure onto 2 boats which then traveled to the former Roman harbor basin, where they were sunk along with the treasure. To retrieve it, he would have only needed to drain the basin. To check his theory, Siegfried is using a ground-penetrating radar which detects metal in the ground. The device picks up on vibrations exactly where he suspects the treasure to be. Something seems to be buried 4 meters beneath the surface. Siegfried is sure it's one of 2 gold-laden boats. For him, this is proof that Hagen sunk the Nibelung treasure in this very location.
It was the most logical thing to do. You could conduct a clandestine operation in the dead of night here, bringing 2 ships here and sinking them to the ground. You could block the branch of the Rhine. You still could access the treasure, which was also mentioned in the Nibelungenlied, since they wanted to retrieve it. Everything fits perfectly. This is where the Nibelung treasure lies.
But Siegfried can't confirm his theory. The site is listed as a cultural heritage. Excavations are prohibited. At least he has had a notary attest to a finder's fee, just in case. In 2014, another find near the Rhine makes headlines. In a forest area in Rulsheim, located in the same region, a detectorist finds gold and silver jewelry worth more than €1 million. Is this the Nibelung treasure? In the Rulsheim forest, Benjamin Czerny takes us to the place where he made the find of his life back in 2014.
And this is where we found it. You can still see a little depression.
Benjamin Czerny has nearly made his way back home when his detector goes off. He and his companions immediately take out their spades.
We started digging. First we found some rods, 50 centimeters deep, silver rods that looked like they were from a garden fence.
They unearth more and more pieces, one by one.
Of course, we felt a certain adrenaline rush as we found all the individual parts and saw how they shimmered, all silver and golden. It's the best outcome for any treasure hunter.
He films the entire hoard at his home and proudly presents his discovery online.
The most beautiful piece. Unfortunately, the gems are missing. They probably fell out.
The video attracts the attention of the authorities, who then seize the treasure. The barbarian treasure of Rulsheim ends up in the State Museum of Koblenz. What the treasure hunter thought to be a garden fence is a rare Roman folding chair. But the real sensation is the bowl.
These bowls are absolutely typical of treasures linked to the hunt.
It's the archaeological proof that the Huns were near the Rhine at the same time as the Burgundians. Is the barbarian treasure of Rulzheim the legendary Nibelung treasure? Scientists still haven't been able to answer this. The problem: a layman has excavated the pieces. A lot of important information was lost in the process.
To archaeologists, an excavation site like this is just like a crime scene. As an archaeologist, you can find countless pieces of information there, in the way the objects are lying next to each other or the scientific samples you can take. And of course, this changes entirely once someone goes digging about with a spade or a hoe. That's just as bad as being a detective who arrives at the crime scene and the cleaner has already tidied up.
While the pieces are clearly from the Burgundian era, it remains uncertain whether they are part of their treasures.
It's possible that this treasure is one of many that went into the ground during the migration period and one that laid the groundwork for future legends.
So maybe the Nibelung treasure is already in a museum, without being labeled as such. Or the hoard is still deep in the ground somewhere in Germany, just waiting to be found by detectorists like Benjamin Czerny.
I think you only come across a treasure as huge as the Nibelung treasure by coincidence. It takes a lot of luck, just like winning the lottery.
And so he hopes that one day he will make another sensational find. Treasure hunter Hans-Jörg Jacobi has found bliss in the actual song of the Nibelungs. He has even composed his own melody.
Uns ist in alten Meeren wundersviel geseit, von Helden, Lobebären, von großer Arbeit, von Freud und Hochgezieten, von Weinen und von Klagen, von kühner Reckenstrieten, moget ihr nun Wunders Ohren sagen.
The Rhine seems to be the only one that knows for sure whether the Nibelung treasure has ever existed. The only certainty we have is that the old myth is much more than mere fantasy. It is the dramatic echo of history.